to make some white dahlias. And my cutter consists of 3 different sizes and a veiner. So this is the set that we're going to use. Also, in addition to this, you would also need a set of the Gumpaste daisy cutters. So this will be used to make the center of the flower, and then later on, as we progress, as the flower becomes bigger, then we're going to use this set of 3 cutters that you can buy at the stores. So I'm going to start off by conditioning my white gum paste. Dahlias actually comes in a very wide array of colors. You can use white or purple, burgundy, or light pink, you know, a lot of different colors, and you can make it to whatever color motif that your cake calls for. So I'm going to take that piece of gum paste and form it into a ball and then into a teardrop. And how I can do it is just by putting some pressure on one side of that ball, and you will end up with this teardrop shape gum paste. I'm going to take a number 26 floral wire. You can use white or green, whichever you prefer. And I'm just going to bend that into an open hook, like so. Alright, I'm going to take some of my gum glue and brush the tip of my wire, wipe off the excess, and I'm going to put that through the wider end of the teardrop. Make sure that you take the bottom of your teardrop and basically just roll it back and forth with your finger just so it sticks to the floral wire, and you close that gap so it doesn't come off once the gum paste is dry. So after this is dry, you let it dry for about 24 hours or so. You take some more white gum paste, I'm just conditioning it between my fingers. Then I'm going to roll that gum paste on my mat. You see, real conditioned gum paste doesn't need any cornstarch on your mat. If it's conditioned right and the consistency is right, it shouldn't be sticky. And if the gum paste is not sticky, you don't really want to add more cornstarch on your surface if it's not sticking, because there's no need for it. So I'm just going to roll this into an even about 1/16 of an inch. I'm going to take the smallest of my Gumpaste daisy cutter set and basically cut it. And as you can see, I'm actually using the cutter upside down because there are a lot of petals here that if I do it like this, I really don't have any control over the pressure that I'm putting on it. Whereas if you do it upside down, you know for sure that everything's cut evenly and that the edges are clean. And this is the same technique that I use if I'm using a plastic cutter. I use all plastic cutters upside down. So after I have cut that, I'll take my cut of petals and take my small ball tool and basically make those petals longer and thinner. So I'm just ball tooling and thinning all 8 petals. There we go. And after I've done that, I will take my Dresden tool, which is the tool, if you have the 5-piece gum paste tool, this is the tool that's shaped like a foot, and I am going to use the thin side. This is the fatter side, as you can see. It has a wider tip, and this has a narrower tip. So I'm going to use that and take this, and I'm going to start. You see how my tool is right on the foam pad, not directly on the petal, because if you do that, you have a tendency of tearing your gum paste and leaving that tip end thicker. So you don't want to do that. So you're going to start from the petal foam pad and dragging that tool towards the center of your cutout. So again, I'm going to start from the foam pad, dragging that in. And I'm going to do that to all 8 petals. And there we go. So after you've done that, you're going to want to brush the center and all the sides of the petals with a little bit of gum glue. And then alternately, I will put some glue right to the very tip. So I'm just going to alternate that. So I'm going to do this petal, and then this petal. I'm going to skip that, and then I'm going to skip this and move on to the next petal. Skip this and move on to this petal. So 1, 2, 3, 4. The alternate 4 has glue all the way to the tip. And I'm going to take that bud that I did earlier that's been dried up already, and I will take all those petals that has glue all the way to the tip and cover that bud with those petals. There you go. And all the rest, I'm just basically going to cup it. So you let this dry upside down. This is a dryer that you use for drying some plates or ceramic. And I love that there are grids in here, so I can just take this and basically hang it right on the side of it, and then just let it dry for a couple of hours or so. And the next step would be another one, or the next size of the Gerber cutter. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take some white gum paste. There we go. Okay, so I'm just rolling the gum paste to about 1/16 of an inch. And I would take the next size cutter, just like how I did the first one. I'm just going to do this. And I'm just rubbing it with the tip of my rolling pin. It doesn't really hurt the rolling pin. Just make sure that, you know, it's not getting scratched up or something. Just make sure that all of the petals are cut. There we go. I'm just going to take that set out, and then I'm going to do another one. So I'm going to do the same thing as I did the first layer. I'm just going to thin out these petals with my ball tool. And I'm just going to drag my Dresden tool again, starting from the foam all the way in. And that's exactly what I'm going to do to the other one as well. So okay, so after I'm done dabbing some gum glue onto these petals, I'll take that bud again. Like I said, you don't necessarily need to dry it. You can just continue on to the next stage, which is this size, and I'm just gonna basically cup it And wherever that petal lands is where it's going to be. And another one. So for the next layer, I'm just going to make sure that they're alternate with the first one that I put on there. There we go. And so this is how it's going to look like. You're going to dry it upside down, just like so. And if you're making a bud, you actually want it to stop at this stage, and I'm going to show you how it looks like. Okay, so I'm going to roll up some green gum paste if we're going to make a bud of the dahlia. We're going to stop at this stage. This is the third layer of the second size of Gerber daisy cutter that we finished. So if we're making a bud, we're going to do the green sepal, 2 green sepals, and it's going to look like this. This is a finished purple dahlia bud. And here I'm going to show you how the sepal is done, and it's exactly just the same as the how the petals are done. We're just going to roll some green gum paste, and this is going to be a little bit thinner than how you would normally roll up a petal. I'm just going to use a small Gerber daisy cutter, the smallest size of the set. Take it out. I'm going to take my petal dust, or my petal pad, use my Dresden tool, and just like how you did the petal, but this time you don't necessarily need to thin the edges, just because I've already rolled it really, really thin. It's thinner than the usual thickness that you would roll a petal in. So I would say if you roll the petal about 1/16 of an inch, this is 1/32. That's how. And then I'm going to press those tips so it's nice and pointy. Then I'm going to brush it with a little bit of gum glue all over. I'm going to take this and put it through my bud. So that's how it's going to look like. This is still wet, so I'm still going to dry it hanging upside down. And then it has a 2-part, so I'm going to roll some more green gum paste, and I'm going to use the same cutter, the smallest of the Gerber daisy cutter set. There we go. And I just love that technique of using the cutters upside down. That way I know for sure that all of my petals are cut the same. Because sometimes when you do it just like the regular cutter, when you press and then wiggle or shake it upside down, because this is a lot of petals, sometimes some of them doesn't really get cut. So I'm going to ball tool this because I rolled it a little bit thicker than what I wanted it to be. And I'm going to take my Dresden tool again. Again, I'm starting from the foam, not on the gum paste. The tip of my tool is on the foam. Then I just go back and forth to make that groove on my sepal. And you see how the sepal is facing up? This is exactly how you're going to put this onto your flower or onto your bud. So I'm going to turn it upside down and brush a little bit of gum glue on the underside, just like that. And then I'll take my bud and stick the second layer of the sepal upside down. So you see how it's actually facing up. And you can even use a little bit of foam pieces in between. So you want to make sure that it's really facing up. Oops. There you go. Just gonna cut this smaller and just put it right onto my gum paste. And there you have it. So just let it dry upside down. And this is how it's going to look like. So this is the dried up finished dahlia bud. So if you're going to continue on to make the bigger flower, after you've done, this is the three layers of the bud already. So you let it dry. And then I'm going to move on to the largest size of the Gerber daisy cutter. So I'm just going to condition my gum paste a little bit. So I'm using the largest cutter, Gerber daisy cutter here. And again, I'm just going to roll my rolling pin there, so I know for sure that all of my petals are cut properly. And I'm just, it's not really hurting my rolling pin, because I'm just controlling the pressure that I'm putting. Don't like jab it and just try to rub it in. Just, very gently. You just basically wanted to see that edge of your cutter, so you know for sure that your petals are cut. Okay, so I'm taking that. Alrighty. So I'm going to again take my ball tool. I'm going to use the larger size of my ball tool this time, and I'm just going to thin the edges, at the same time elongate each and every petal. Okay, so after I've thinned each and every petal, I will take again my dressing tool, and this time I'm going to use the fatter side of it. But again, I'm just going to start from the foam, dragging my gum paste in towards the center of my flower, and I'm going to brush some gum glue right on the center and the base of each and every petal. That way I know that it sticks to my center. And I'm going to wipe off all the excess, because you just want it nice and tacky but not slippery, because if you made it too wet, then it becomes very slippery. Then I'll take that bud that I did earlier that's been dried up already, and I'll put it right through the center. Now this time I am, instead of just drying it upside down like this, because if you dry it just like this, then all of the petals will just dry like in one direction, and that's not the effect that I wanted. So to be able to control it, I will take my large cone flower former. I'm going to take that and put that right through the center. Now you see it's like, it's not really the form that you're looking for. I'm going to take like small pieces of foam and basically support some of the petals standing up. So however you wanted to dry these petals, you can just take pieces of foam and just let it rest there. There we go. So as you see, I arrange it where some of the petals are going towards the inside of the bud more than the others. So it's up to you how you want it to arrange it, and it should dry just like this. So this is like the center, and as you can see, it's not really even, and you don't really want it even because some of the petals are still like right towards where the bud is, and some of them are more open. So after that's dry, we're going to proceed to the rest of the petals, and this time I am going to make the individual petals. So I've taken some of my white gum paste. Again, you can use whatever color you need, whether it be purple or pink or white, because dahlias comes in a very wide array of colors. You can even use yellow. And I would roll my gum paste to where the base is thicker than the rest. Just like so. You see how this is thicker than the rest of my gum paste. And then I'll take the veiner that comes with a set. I will go ahead and press that onto my gum paste. Make sure that it's like nice and even. And I will first use the smallest out of the three gum paste cutters in the set, and I'll make sure that the base is right where the thick part is, so that I will have space to insert my 26 gauge wire. Now this time I don't need to hook it, I just need to dampen the tip of the wire. I'm going to hold my petal upside down with the wider side at the top and hold it with my forefinger and thumb while I'm inserting the stem wire. That way I can feel where the wire is going through, and as you can see, it didn't go through either way. It's not poking through, and I just inserted it about 1/4 of an inch down. You don't need it anywhere thicker than that or longer than that. So I'm going to take my ball tool and then just thin the edges of my petal. Don't forget to thin out the base, because there's a lot of petals on this flower, so you don't want the base too thick, because otherwise your petals are not going to align. They're going to be one on top of another. Then I will take my needle tool and drag that tool, and again, look at the tip of my needle. It's starting on the foam, not on the gum paste, because if I do that, I will tear that gum paste. So I'll start at the tip of my needle tool is right on the foam, and I'm just going to fold that in half. Then I'll take my egg crate foam former, and then I'll just let it just dry and shape. So I'm going to make about 12 of that size. I'm going to make 12 of each of the sizes of this dahlia cutter. You can actually, you may use fewer than 12 petals, but I suggest that you make more. It's better to make more than less of the petals. That way you have extra instead of like waiting for the petals to dry again before you can continue to complete your flower. That is always a bummer. So I suggest every time you make a gum paste project that you make extra petals, just in case something breaks. At least you have something to replace it with. So again, what I did is just like how I did the first petal, where I rolled it where the base is thicker than the rest, so I have space to put in my stem wire. I'm going to take some 26 gauge, and I usually cut my stem wire to about 3 inch in length. And I just brushed a little bit of gum glue. Again, I'm taking that petal and putting it in between my forefinger and thumb, so I know exactly where the wire is going. And take my ball tool and thinning out the edges. And as you can see, I'm holding my ball tool like a pen. You can hold your ball tool like this, whichever it is that you're more comfortable with, because if you're awkward holding your tool, the outcome of what you're doing is not going to be right. And I feel more comfortable holding the ball tool like a pen. That way I can just outline the petal without erasing the veining on the center. So I'm going to take that again and put that right on top of my foam egg crate petal former. So I'm drying it to where, like, this is slightly bending forward. All right. And so for the last size of this flower, the biggest size, I would say, again, I would roll it just like how I did the first two, where the base is slightly thicker than the rest of the gum paste. So I'm just veining this gum paste again, and I'm going to use the largest of my Dahlia cutter. I'm just pressing it down and shaking it, make sure that my cut is nice and clean. And again, I'm going to hold it, I'm going to get my 26 gauge floral wire, brush it with a little bit of glue, wipe off the excess, and then hold my gum paste upside down, forefinger or middle finger and thumb, just pushing it in up to about 1/4 of an inch, and then thin out the edges of my petal. And I'm putting a little bit of pressure so that I can get that natural flounciness of a petal, or the movement, I would say, of a petal. And this time I'm going to fold it in half. I'm not going to drag it with my needle tool because I don't really want that stripe on there, or that line in the middle of my petal. Again, don't forget to thin out the base of your petal. I'm going to fold it in half. I'm going to take the large cone dryer, just like the dryer that we used for our center earlier, and I'm just going to take this and then dry it in shape. Alrighty, so I'm going to dry this for about 2 hours or so. You can fit in up to 4 petals right here, so you don't really need to have a whole lot of these dryer. There's like 5 cavities in here, and you can take the petal off after 2 to 3 hours after it's already been shaped, and you can put more flowers there. So I'm going to make like 12 of each of those sizes. So I'm going to take that bud that we dried up already, and a half a width of my floral tape. I'm going to stretch that floral tape to release the adhesive. And I'm going to start from, of course, the smallest of my petals. I will take this and hold the base of the petal where the gum paste ends and push the wire backwards. So I'm going to take that and hold the tip, the very end of my my floral tape with my forefinger and wrap it twice to where I couldn't see the wire anymore. You see, I couldn't see this wire. So I'm just going to go and wrap it around this petal, or this bud, the center that I've done earlier. And I'll come back after it's done. So now I'm done with putting in all the 12 smaller petals that that I made. These are 12 that I added here, and it almost looked like almost a finished flower already. So I'm just going to go and take the next size of petals that I did and kind of fill up the gaps of the first petal. Again, I am wrapping each stem with two half-width floral wire, and I'm just going to again do this evenly distributed throughout the around the flower. And I have about 12, but you don't necessarily need to use all 12 of them. You could probably end up using 8 or 10, however many you think the flower needed. So this is my 8th petal of the medium-sized. And I think I'm going to stop on the 8th. I don't think that I need more than that. So you see how it almost looks like it's done. Again, you can stop at this stage if you wanted to, of course, but I would just go and add some more petals just because I love them. So I'm just going to keep on adding more of this large. This is the last size of the cutters with the dahlia. So that's my first. And again, I want to make sure that I wrap each and every wire as tight as I can close to the base, because I don't want to see all those wires that are protruding there. So I ended up using all 12 of my largest petals. So I used 12 of the smallest, 8 of the medium, and then 12 of the biggest petal. And I'm just going to go and wrap the rest of my stem so it looks like one big stem instead of like all these tiny little, especially for this one. There's a lot of them right here, as you can see. There's a lot of petals to this flower, just like how Peony is, up to that last bit of wire. Ta-da! And this is how it looks like. You see how pretty that is? So you can leave the flower just as is, just plain white. I would dust this with a little bit of pearl dust just to give it a little bit of shimmer. Or this is another variation that I did earlier. And what I did here is I just brushed a touch of a buttercup yellow in each individual petal, like right at the base, and then it goes lighter on the top, and you can just take a little bit of petal dust, and I'll show you how it's done. I'm going to use my palette petal dust because this is a lot less messier than the regular dust. And I would take some buttercup yellow and brush it onto a piece of paper, so there's not a lot of petal dust on my brush. And I would brush it starting from the base of my petal going upwards to where it kind of vanishes to the top. There you go. So I will leave the top white, but then I would base the base yellow, and you can even use a little bit of sunflower right at the very very base, so it's darker than the rest of the petal. And then I will take some old rose, I'd say old rose dust, and just put in like a really tiny touch of that old rose right at the very tip. That way you have that tiny little pink at the tip and then yellow at the center. This is how it's going to look like when it's assembled. And I also made a purple. And as you can see, I used African violet to dust each and every petal. I started with the light purple gum paste and dusted all the tip all the way to the base with a light dusting of African violet. And this is the bud that has not been touched with any kind of petal dust. So this is the original color, and this is how it's finished. Isn't that pretty? That is really, really pretty flower.